Hello, everyone. Hello and welcome. I've just started recording, so I just want to officially welcome you here to the first gathering in this container. I want to say thank you so much for responding to my words and my energy that I have shared these past weeks, whether you've seen, I think most of you have seen the articles on Substack. And I know some of you from The Conscious Lawyer, and I just want to say thank you. I know we're a small group of women, but I'm so grateful for you coming on this journey with me. And yeah, so just to begin, I really want to set an intention for this container, for the container as a whole, and for each gathering. And I think, I was reflecting on it, and for me, this feels like the intention is to feel this greater permission in our bodies and energy to step out of existing systems, which are unraveling before our eyes and will continue to do so. Um, Even if this just means energetically stepping outside. So it's a personal decision for everyone whether to work within the legal system or outside of it. But it's really to, yeah, listen and perceive the greater guidance that's coming in from our bodies through our deep intuition, through symbols or signs we may see, from the earth when we connect with her in different ways and the ways she may speak to us, and also from this feminine stream of wisdom that may appear in the form of different goddesses or Lady Justice herself. And yeah, I ask that for the duration of this container, that we are held and guided by these wisdom streams so that we become clearer ourselves on our own unique paths in law and justice, and that we can share and support each other in that process too. So, why the sacred feminine? Um, I know this term can be ambiguous and mean different things to different people. And I've noticed this even in response to some of the things I've written. You know, people interpret this word, the feminine, in different ways, and it can be triggering. And for me, essentially, what I mean at its core is it's the earth and our bodies, as women in particular, the sacred feminine, that's what it's pointing to. It's deeper than just feminine energy, which I know we often say all humans contain masculine and feminine energy. Um, the sacred feminine is more this dimension of the earth and the aliveness, and the earth and the aliveness in our feminine bodies that has been historically suppressed and disallowed. Um, yeah, and I think for me, this realm has woken up since I gave birth about 5 years ago, 5.5 years ago. I remember the first book I bought after that was You Are a Goddess. And it just kind of, I don't know, I was just really drawn to it. And I know this is probably a common experience. Um, and so it started from there. And I think the process for me of giving birth really opened my body to a very raw, primal kind of feminine energy that I'd never experienced before. I think I think that aspect of my being had been completely shut down, for different reasons. And I wanted to know more, and that's where it began. So the five themes that I want to explore, and these were really just I chose these kind of intuitively, sensing into the pathway that we would take. And I think they're going to just unfold as we move along. And so, first today, we're looking at separation. Next, we will look at grief in the law. Next, Indigenous wisdom. Next, honor, truth, and justice as sacred feminine qualities. And last, then, this idea of the rebirth of Lady Justice and what that might mean. And I think, for myself, I'm really allowing this process, this kind of feminine process of revelation and listening. And this sense of creating a container felt really important and actually feels really good to me. It's like so very bound kind of space, very structured and clear. And yet within that, there's kind of movement and intuition and allowing a kind of creative flow, not really knowing necessarily what's going to come. I found even for this particular, the first session, I had a certain idea of what I wanted to talk about, and then it kind of completely changed in the last couple of weeks, and even yesterday and this morning, and just kind of allowing that, to flow through. So, yeah, just to introduce myself, especially for those who don't know me, and I think it's important that we each, can share how we came to this journey and what our story is with law. Um, so I didn't study law in university, and I'm an Irish woman. I come from Ireland, and that's where yeah, went to school, went to university, and everything. So I didn't study law, but when I was about 24 years old, I had already finished university. I had left my first job after university in not so healthy circumstances. And so I was working in a hotel as a hostess, and I was, quite in a bit of period of existential angst, wondering where my life was going. But yeah, I was working in this kind of posh Dublin hotel, and I went for an appointment to a chiropodist because my feet were killing me. I was yeah, on my feet all day. And this chiropodist, I walked into her office, and the first thing she said to me was, "You should be a lawyer." And I think it was something about the way, I don't know, I had said one sentence to her, but in any event, yeah, to me it was like a message from God or something, because I just knew someone had said the right words to me at the right time in the right place, and I just knew she was right. I had this like feeling of certainty. And it's interesting to me now that it was a woman who was kneading my feet, this kind of foundational aspect, and my connection with the earth. And when she spoke these words, just reflecting on it now, given what I'm interested in. So that's how I got into law. And yeah, I put this, I won this scholarship in 2007 when I was about 28. And I put this here not necessarily to, like, big note myself or anything, but rather it was also a moment where I had this sense of, on paper, everything is saying that I should be an excellent lawyer. I should be moving to the top firms. I should be like excelling and on the partner track and all, and have that desire. And I found myself, I was 28, feeling exactly the opposite. Yeah, I actually was really doubting um, at that point whether I even wanted to stay in law. And that was a point in my life where I really made this commitment that I wanted inner peace beyond all else. Um, and so I think making that commitment to myself brought a major shift in my life. Um, so then yeah, I, so the next period, I was living and working in Sydney, in Australia. And I think I've written about this, but it was an incredible time. And I think, I had made that commitment to myself. I had also discovered at this point meditation. I was on that kind of spiritual path. And this is something that I'm still exploring myself, but there was some kind of coming together of kind of a sense of a spiritual awakening, and this incredible opportunity in a major law firm where I felt, um, yeah, I was really moving in those kind of um, ambitious legal circles, and it felt great. I was really excelling, actually, despite myself. This is where I started to reflect on the power of meditation and mindfulness and law, because I couldn't believe the benefits that it was giving me. And I've written about that a lot. That was one of the motivations for creating the Conscious Lawyer, the magazine I had. Um, but yeah, this is a piece that I'm also reflecting on myself a bit more deeply, because there was this coming together of a kind of an opening, a spiritual awakening, and um, yeah, a real sense of power in the legal system. And I think I was really observing the energies at that time. And yeah, the next phase, I would call it, was when I moved to London, actually. And I had been deeply moved by what I'd experienced in Sydney, and I no longer was really interested in a traditional legal career. So this is where I eventually created this online magazine, The Conscious Lawyer, which was yeah, a really important phase for me. And um, I know both Michelle and Rebecca on this call. I met them through that magazine. And yeah, I feel like, I mean, I can talk about this more maybe, but I feel like this was really exploring like the heart and law, and like opening the heart, and also this sense of deep calm that and mindfulness, where we are tapping into that deeper sense of peacefulness within ourselves and then bringing this to legal practice. Of course, what we are seeing is that, that is very much now being adopted in law firms. I mean, back then in 2013, 2014, it was very, very new. Now it really is starting to integrate, but of course, it kind of has, can be co opted in a lot of situations in that it's really just making people more productive or yeah, and you're still bound within a kind of the same dysfunctional system, which is what I really came to feel and realize. Yeah, in any event, um, so I would say the next phase then was really a moving into more of a spiritual descent. Um, I moved back to Ireland, and this was really a period of, yeah, discovering womb awakening. I had given birth to my son. I was in, yeah, this is the dark night of the soul, and yeah, really happy to talk more about all of these things. But I think this is where I really did go deeper into my own connection with the body and with the earth and with um yeah, just these deeper currents and deeper movements, and started to question actually a lot of the work and ideas that I had been evolving with the conscious lawyer. And that has brought me to now. And actually, I'm based in the Netherlands now, which is a whole other story that I won't go into right now. So yeah, today these are the themes, or this is the theme for today on exploring this theme of separation consciousness. And I just want to say that what I'm going to introduce are all of these are kind of big topics, and I feel like I'm really only introducing ideas of topics to try and weave some threads together. And um, as I said, I think with this container, it is really it does feel like a bit like a walk in the woods where you're kind of pulling back, the brambles, and you're feeling into ideas. And I'm so, again, grateful to have, the company of others to share this with, because I know we're all doing this in different ways. And so yeah, I feel like today it's a few really big kind of ideas that in themselves, of course, could be like year-long courses. So I apologize if it feels a little bit like introducing the surface of certain ideas, but I hope to kind of drop a few pennies in. And just to say too, of course, this is all about our own experience and our own knowing. And I love this invitation that someone made to me recently, that we all have our own narrow path. So we don't have to resonate with or dive into or understand everything. Our body will naturally want to follow one or more threads. And if your body responds to something in particular, then that may be a subject area or a feeling to explore more deeply. And I'd love if you want to take a note of that, either mentally or with a pen. Just take a note if you have a big response to something. Yeah, and this is just a reminder that, our own bodies and feelings and intuition are so important. And it's developing the capacity to deeply listen and trust our unique body knowing and intelligence, and let the mind explore and understand. And combine these mystical, intuitive, feminine senses. They're non-verbal, non-logical. They can be ancient memories living in our DNA, with emerging, groundbreaking scientific research and knowledge that is emerging, um, particularly around ecosomatics and eco-embodiment. So what do we mean when we talk about separation consciousness in the law? I've struggled with this concept and idea myself, and it's one of the reasons I wanted to bring it here, because I think we talk about this a lot, especially in spiritual circles. And I think I used to understand separation from a mindfulness and meditation perspective. So I felt like, okay, I understand that my mind and its chatter are separating me from my like non-dual unified nature, um, that I can feel when, I'm in a deep state of meditation or mindfulness. And um, that's how I was viscerally kind of understanding this difference between separation and unification. But it was all kind of in this, in this area. It's like, oh, again, my mind is chattering, my thoughts are separating me from um, reality. And then when the mind stops, when it rests, then I'm, in unification. And I'm not necessarily saying this is wrong, I think, but this is just on one level or it's one aspect. Sorry, I'm just going to turn off something here. um, yeah, so as I deepen my understanding on this, I think this invitation to understand separation from only this perspective is kind of like a masculine approach to spirituality. And it's the same problem that we see manifesting in the material world, which is now manifesting in spirituality. And so, our religious and spiritual systems themselves also have this vein of deeper separation running through them. So we're only connecting upwards towards these cosmic realms, towards God in the sky, towards our angelic natures. And meanwhile, we're trying to escape everything that is below, that is undesirable, messy, unclean, dirty. This is kind of the conditioning of of our bodies and the earth herself. So when we speak of separation, consciousness, and law, this is how my understanding has deepened. Like we're really speaking not of our separation from some cosmic, pure state of unified godlike consciousness. It's our true separation from our roots, our entanglement with the earth, with our earthly feminine perceptions, and from our desire natures that are holy and profound. And this is about separation from the earth and from our feminine nature. And these are in many ways one and the same. So I share this quote because I was really moved when I read this, and something landed very deeply for me in this, in relation to law and our legal systems. So in our present culture, we celebrate the masculine. Our energetic movements tend toward ascending upwards to the sky. We worship a God who lives outside of us, somewhere far away, up there in heaven. We speak of being on top of the world, flying high and climbing the ladder of success. In our present culture, we celebrate the masculine. Our energetic movements tend toward ascending upward to the sky. Oh, I think it's repeating itself, is it? In any event, you can read the quote. Maybe it's it's repeating itself, but yeah, you can read the quote, and I will send the slides out. But yeah, I think when I this so this book, Womb Awakening, was one of the books that I bought after my son was born in 2020, and I could feel at that time my own descent, beginning, like this blackness kind of pulling me down into my own life and into my own roots. And yeah, I had come from working in a major law firm in London where, generally as law firms go, the culture was positive and friendly. And I didn't feel particularly stressed or overworked. But at the same time, I had long stepped off the partner track. And so you have this kind of feeling as a woman. So this is a whole other conversation. But I think when we can't fit in, when it just does not work with our feminine body, when we can't, be our true shape, but we still, need to support ourselves financially, we can kind of step to the side. And so we become this kind of sideshow, a support. And this is what I did for a long time in London. I was a professional support lawyer. And it was mainly, men in suits, and it was all steel and glass, and it was, you know, escalators up to the or elevators up to the, 11th floor or whatever. And so just yeah, it's just landed for me very deeply. Wow, my feminine body, this is where it has been in this hyper masculinized environment. Yeah, so this is the this is what I'm talking about. Yeah, and the gherkin took on a whole new meaning. And I just want to say too, there's nothing wrong with the up and out kind of masculine movement, energetic movement on from a healthy perspective. So I've moved away from really this, right and wrong kind of place where we really just, I mean, there's one thing about really feeling and expressing those deep emotions, and we will come on to the grief and those deeper emotions at really having been in and having had to train and work in these very imbalanced environments. um However, it's not the answer either to go into battle with them, at least for at least that's not my path. So it's more for me about observing how the body feels and making choices. Um, and just to mention briefly something that I have worked on myself with one of my teachers who works with feminine wealth is this idea of earth magic and quantum magic. And quantum magic is more, maybe these kind of settings come into it. It is more about the power, the AI, the technology, and that is a part of our reality as well. And there can be positive aspects to that, um, as long as there is a deep integrity and also a deep connection and honor with our earth magic too. Yeah, this was a quote from Peter Gable, whose writings um, I really love. If you've ever heard of him or his books or writings, Peter was the chair of PISLAP, the Project for Integrating Spirituality, Law, and Politics. And yeah, this is just another quote which emphasizes this separation that is rife and permeates our legal systems. Lawyers cannot really do what they do and remain easily fully present in their bodies. They often have to establish a type of interior barrier that keeps them disconnected from their bodies and their feelings. I often call this the glassy eyed stare. Lawyers are often reading their thoughts as they make their arguments. It is this capacity to transpose the life world into a mental legal schema and then narrate it. It's very important to remember that humanity always remains, even in the law firm. Yeah, and so on that, I wanted to show this very short video, and it's no offense to the lawyer in this video, but really to invite our bodies to feel this. And some or all of you may be very familiar with this realm of big law. I know that I am, and I know that it really does make my body feel a particular way. So I just invite you to watch. And yeah, just sense into anything that you might feel.
Ever since I could remember, I've always wanted to be a defense attorney. As I grew up, I knew this wasn't just a dream, but my passion. I do not get intimidated. but I relish the challenge. Fighting for my client is what drives me every day. Everyone deserves the best level of defense. That's exactly what we bring. I'm Galpi Sets, and I'm here to defend, protect, fight for your rights.
Yeah. So, yeah, maybe just notice what might have come up for you, whether this is a very familiar type of scenario or setting or energy or language, or maybe it's not. And I just want to add that, I have also worked in these environments and had some positive experiences, and I think this is part of this deeper feminine work around power. Where do we feel our power and where can we claim our power? And so I enjoyed some of the power that I felt in some of these environments. And um, even though maybe it wasn't my most natural, organic power, my true feminine power, but it was the only power that I could access. But power is important too, I think, to explore healthy power. And, I was remembering as I was creating these slides today that I volunteered for a period of a few months in Schumacher College in Devon. If any of you have heard of it, it's a kind of holistic, uh, well, it's a kind of alternative university um, that focuses on holistic and ecological subjects. Probably not the best description. I apologize, but it's an incredible place. Satish Kumar founded it, or at least has led it for many years. If you've heard of Satish Kumar, so yeah, one of the lead teachers when I was there, I remember he said something. He knew that I was working in law, and he said, we need you to bring your world to us and our world to you. And it was this sense of like, um, yeah, it's not necessarily about abandoning one world and running off to the other. This is also where the power and the money is. So it's some interesting questions. Yeah, and I think for me at least, these feelings that evokes in my body are very familiar, and it includes feeling armored, feeling disconnected, feeling no feminine energy, feeling no earth, grounded or loving energy. So yeah, and just a few stories. I know we all have plenty of stories that, from our own experiences. For me, from the very beginning, when I was a trainee in Ireland and I was working in a small local firm, actually in my hometown, I always remember one of the solicitors in our small practice was, to me, she always was very contracted and anxious. And she would warn me all the time, you might get sued, you might get sued, like the profession was just so stressful. And she was always reminding me. And yeah, it really stuck with me. That was like one of my first impressions. And I thought, wow, I was really having second thoughts about this profession. And I also would have to appear frequently for our local district judge, who was notorious for being extremely mean to new young lawyers. And yeah, it was also, you'd be trembling, you'd have to go down there every Tuesday and you'd just be trembling. And so there was a lot of anxiety. And I think some of that flavor, I do look at in different ways now too. And maybe I'll go into that a little bit when I come on to the ecosomatics part, where we talk about the prey and predator kind of layers. So yeah, I think some initiation that we have to go through can be good. It activates our power, when we're in those scary situations and we really have to kind of activate ourselves. So I do see it in slightly different ways now. But yeah, another really eye-opening moment when I came back to Ireland and I was doing some interviews at some top law firms in Dublin, and I had this great experience that I'd gotten when I lived in Sydney. So I was, very eligible for some of these top firms, and I just remember these two male partners interviewing me and pointing to my CV and really arrogantly kind of asking, what I got the B in, and like, there was a lot of A's there, and oh, it really just turned my stomach. So yeah, you have certain experiences that really stay with you and that really um they really highlight some of this toxicity, in the system. And yeah, another very powerful one was when I was practice development lawyer in London with this insurance team, and I would always be having to read and scan these massive catastrophes worldwide because, of course, insurance companies are very interested in what is happening. And I felt so much cognitive dissonance doing this exercise because I would only be having to focus or expected to focus on the monetary amounts. So, what did this cost the insurance industry? And actually, even well, some of the articles were written in insurance publications anyway, so they wouldn't even mention necessarily anything about the human impact or the wider impact on community or um, the suffering that it had caused. And it's just incredible how dissociated this makes you and actually how you switch off. And I had to keep tuning into the fact that I couldn't feel actually. I was noticing it was like normal not to feel anything. And I think this is part of, I know there's a lot of more trauma informed lawyering, and this, relates to that as well. Um, yeah. Um, so yeah, another story when I returned to Ireland and I really was hoping to get permission to practice law without having to purchase this practicing certificate, especially in Ireland. I had already a practicing certificate for the UK where I was qualified. But in Ireland, the practicing certificates are extremely expensive. And at this point, I was, freelancing. I was, moving into kind of a very difficult period in my life. And, I wrote this kind of nice email to the Law Society in Ireland, kind of like, yeah, is it okay to practice here, with my UK certificate and maybe with certain boundaries? And I just got this really cold email back, and essentially it was like, no, you can't practice at all unless you pay like €2,500 for your practicing certificate. And I remember at the time really like sitting with that and being like, and actually I wrote myself an email that I would have liked to have received. You're thinking you've done all this training and education and um yeah, what is this? What is this vein of coldness that's running through the whole system, this lack of heart, I suppose. And so that was, yeah, there was another kind of, where you're throwing your hands up in the air kind of moment. Yeah. So yeah, and that's just, I think, I feel like I've been present in these environments I haven't really left. So I've kind of been observing these environments for a long time and just noticing this increasing fragmentation, increasing rules and categories, and yeah, increasing techno speak and language. And then on the other hand, on the ground amongst people, this kind of palpable sense of chaos and collapse. Um, yeah, and then on the other hand, in leadership discussions and strategies, it's like more growth, more technology, more dissociation. So they're just a few of my own stories and experiences. Yeah, so these are diagrams from an organization called Nature's Rights, and many of you may be familiar with Nature's Rights and Munta Ito. So Nature's rights say we are nature and part of an interdependent web of life. When nature thrives, we thrive. When nature dies, we die. Um, and the law treats nature as objects, property, and resources separate to us. This leads to an economy coupled with the destruction of nature. When we destroy nature, we destroy ourselves. Recognizing the rights of nature is the foundation of all other rights changes the game. So I just wanted to bring in these slides because I think they're really helpful and I like the diagrammatic and I gave it I know Munta or I met Munta and know her through the Conscious Lawyer and we gave a talk together a few years ago and she presented these slides and I really loved them because it helps just visualize what we're talking about where we have this like bottom of the iceberg, this root, of separation consciousness. And then we see how this then builds to this, mechanistic paradigm worldview, silo systems and structures. It leads to the crisis that we see. And then on the other hand, this generative cycle where we heal the root and we restore connection. And I loved this metaphor of the iceberg. And when I saw these first, it was back in 2018 or 19, and I think I could feel my own iceberg. I could feel this deep root of separation at my own root, and that somehow I knew that it was relevant to this path I was on, but I couldn't quite move forward until I descended into my own route. And it wasn't as easy as just um, absorbing these ideas. It was going to take more than that. There was a descent. And I think often life will bring us there anyway, especially when we show the willingness to go there. It's not always easy, for sure. Um, you know, and I'm really interested to have that dialogue with everyone, about maybe journeys you've been on or where life has taken you. I think it's not easy to get to the bottom of this route, and it brings in layers of our own pain in this lifetime and our ancestors' pain and how we are disconnected from nature and from our own bodies. And for women, it touches on very deep wounds. And so I think what I want to just share and emphasize is that to move towards this generative and life-giving cycle within law, it's about descending, it's about moving down to the bottom or the root of the iceberg and feeling that separation and beginning the repair within our own bodies so that we can then really embody this and we can feel this healed state viscerally in our bodies and we can begin to reorient our legal wisdom and knowledge towards, okay, how can I begin to practice law from here? What does this mean? And of course, it's not about coming to some fully healed state, because it's an ongoing journey and process. So, yeah, at this point, I think I'm going to pause and invite us into just a very short breath work so that we can begin to feel this a little and let our bodies relax into this. So, I think, some drum music will play. And let's see, I think it might come on now. Yeah. So Yeah, we're just going to do a very short breath work practice. It's very simple, but can be powerful. And no, sorry. I just invite you to breathe in through the nose, bringing the energy up to the upper energy centers, and out through the mouth, bringing the energy down through the rest of your body. So I'll just check if the music is going to come on. Go, come on now. So before we begin, I invite you to begin rolling your shoulders. Gently roll your neck and your spine. Just take a slow and deep inhalation through your nose. As you exhale, feel free to let out a deep sigh. Feel to a deep sigh of relief and release. And you can just notice how that feels. If it feels easy or feels a little bit more difficult, just keep observing. And just continue breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth, slowly and deeply. And this is a practice where we are connecting actually down into the earth. And as we're doing this, we're letting our consciousness just drop into this process, giving ourselves to the process. This is gentle and calming breath work, and it's involving the body. And when we open the mouth, it brings breath down into the body. As we breathe in, we can call on the energy of the sun. We're calling in the energy and the wisdom of the sun. It gives all the energy that is in our body and on this planet. And we're open to receiving and merging our consciousness with this energy of life, with sunlight and the codes of information, this evolutionary impulse that seeds and nourishes our Mother Earth. And as we exhale through the mouth, we're opening into the energy of Mother Earth, the source of every atom in our body, her fertile womb, her dark, fertile soil that gives birth to our life, to the life future. And we're opening to receive her communications. We're opening to her elements, to her waters, her crystals, and all of her layers. And as we continue to inhale through the nose and exhale through the mouth, we're calling in the elemental beings, the air, the water, the fire, the earth. These energies that shape creation, that make up our body and all life, we're opening to their energy and wisdom. And we're opening to the wisdom of our ancient and eco ancestors. And we're opening to the wisdom of our human ancestors, our earth ancestors. And maybe our ancestors who were very connected themselves. We can call in these connected ancestors. So I invite you to take a Few final inhales and exhale through the mouth. Few final rounds. Feel that deeper relaxation in the body, perhaps deeper connectedness. All right. Thank you for sharing in that breathwork practice. And so it's a nice lead in to this deeper work that I just wanted to introduce. And this is work actually that I'm doing a course right now, and I wasn't expecting to be doing this course, so it's really nice to be able to just introduce it because it really is a kind of area of new and groundbreaking science that's emerging, which I think is really supporting um, this journey of embodiment and deeper connection with the earth. It's really offering us a strong evidentiary um, basis and invitation to experience ourselves as really part of the earth. And um, yeah, for me, in relationship to what we're speaking here, this is exactly so we can deepen our roots, so we can feel that strength and courage from the earth herself and all of our eco ancestors, and then feel our own unique path forward, expressing our own unique gifts. I will say that I'm going to share a few words from Azra Bertrand on this work. It's obviously, it's you can look up more of it if you like. It's obviously kind of a vast work, so I'm not going to be able to say too much. But one of the things he says is, and he's a trained doctor, but has worked for years and years as a holistic and I would say kind of ecological practitioner. And he says there's so many systems today where there is a biomedical soul that denies consciousness and quantum biology, very subtle underlying energies that profoundly shape creation and our body and biology. Love and consciousness, these are not small energies, but huge energies. He combines holistic and quantum science with actual embodied experience and with magic and prayer and intention. And he says these were never meant to be separated. There are so many systems today. Yeah, that's the same sentence. So he says it's the strength of our asking and our prayer that determines what comes through for us, that determines what we are able to grow and that we're able to activate dormant parts of our being. He says prayer or intention has never been separate from this process of growth. So, yeah, the overview of ecosomatics, he covers eco ancestors and eco epigenetics, our non-human ancestral inheritance, and the inclusion of our environment as somatic. He covers eco epigenetics over evolutionary time, how the intelligence of evolution is imprinted in us, also guiding our future evolution. Cerebellar consciousness, the dragon brain as mother mind of the somatic experience and governance of our nervous system, the symbiotic self, the entangled layers of self with environment, evolution, and the different layers of non human Gaian intelligence. The ecosomatic nervous system theory, working with the main 5 layers of the nervous system and the prey predator nervous system. The fluid body, the special role of water in our evolution, primordial ocean, amniotic womb, lymph, fascia, cellular waters. ecosomatic characterology, the human ancestral imprint on our bone structure and posture, and how eco ancestors can heal us. So these are some of the areas that he is covering, and yeah, this is just a picture of the elemental mothers, and um, I wanted to just touch on this is one of the aspects that ecosmatics is bringing in, which is really interesting, and I think also ties in with um, our movement towards reintegrating a healthy relationship with time and with cycles and with planetary movements, is this discussion around rites of passage. And he speaks of learning the importance of rites of passage rituals to elder our nervous systems through key evolutionary points that occur from the moment we leave the womb through to crossing the threshold into our own elderhood. And in elder cultures and shamanic traditions, they recognize the needs of the individual to receive personal communal support through these evolutionary transition periods. In our modern cultures, much of this has been lost or significantly disconnected from the roots and richness of its purpose. So, yeah, I'm really interested in exploring how we can begin to reintegrate these, and how we can explore what relevance this has to us as lawyers supporting people. Um, and yeah, I think this greater context and being aware of it, it can be incredibly valuable when you're dealing with someone who's going through a major life transition or a major life change. And yeah, I think for now I'll just kind of, pose that question. Perhaps we can move to that when we come to really talking about how we practice in these in these ways where we can really honor um, these lost parts of our being and our ancient past. And so I think one of the really interesting parts of ecosomatics that I really found fascinating is ecosomatic constellations, which is a form of ecopsychotherapy where we expand our concept of family and ancestors to include our non human ancestors and the evolutionary ancestors who formed our biology and live on inside us as genetic memory. And so, for example, Azra Bertrand talks about, that we all contain a map of all living beings throughout time inside of ourselves. We have tree, plant, fungal, mitochondrial layers. He talks of the aquatic layer, like he talks of the jellyfish, and that all our development began in water, and part of our being and consciousness that is sensitive to multidimensional energies and our deep oracular nature. This is also where we regenerate. This is beautiful for receiving oracular information and for restoring our nervous system. We have a predator layer where we find our power and strength, the ability to resource ourselves, to take the resources we need without shame, to take up space. And if you look at predators, there's a relaxed nature in their body. They're inhabiting themselves, they're not making themselves small or shy. This is really, I think, yeah, this is really powerful for feminine power, and how we've been conditioned to be in our prey layer, which Azra speaks of as well. He says we have a hunter layer. It's represented by a certain type of energy or wisdom. It's feminine wisdom in particular across cultures, connected with witches, night beings, seeing into the dark places, into the unconscious realm, across the veils. And then this prey layer, which, he says is also a very beautiful and natural part of our being. It's knowing that we are walking in the world in which there are predators, and knowing when we need to hide or hang back or hold our position. Um, and these animals also have an incredibly beautiful magic. And these are just, the reason I'm introducing this is that we're talking about moving to this route and reorienting ourselves to more deeply embody our kind of earth magic and feminine magic, and really deepen into and understand how connected we are. And so this work I find particularly powerful on that journey. And then to speak a little bit about feminine magic and womb awakening. And in a way, this is not separate from the work that I've just mentioned, but um, it's just another layer. But I think for women in particular, this deeper teaching on the feminine mysteries and on the power of our womb is really important to deepen into if we feel called to it. And yeah, for me, the womb awakening part is not necessarily only reconnecting with the human womb and perhaps our mother's experience and revisiting that birth trauma. Um, this is also more about the earth or elemental womb, and I've included here a slide which goes into that. Um, and he says most mothers in modern culture are not supported by deep elemental and community connection, and are expected to raise a child in spiritual and bioenergetic isolation, creating a fractured society. In ancient cultures, rebirth technologies focused on a return to the womb of Mother Earth in order to rebirth through the template of a Gaia consciousness and Sophianic wisdom, and to call upon the support of the greater mothers who create all life. So I know I haven't included too much here on the feminine magic stream or feminine wisdom, womb awakening, and perhaps we can go into this in later calls. How I'm really weaving this or feeling this is that when women in particular really do this root work and begin to reacquaint ourselves with our organic power, our innate power, and we really begin to feel that blossoming, we are like the earth expressing herself more than anything, more than men. So women have this special magic and power, I feel. Not to get too vague about it, but it's there are kind of there is something really powerful and important now for women to lead on and to take the reins on. And in a way, it feels like men are waiting for us to do that, and to really um, embody and lead the way in this, in living this kind of earth magic, and living from this root and womb centered path, which is bringing in a different dimension. I've just included some images here, and we can explore this more. But I ask, as women in law, who are we and how are we when we begin to restore this deep earth magic to our bodies? It's slow and deep work, it's an unplugging, it's a returning, it's a restoration. And it's more challenging for those of us who have had to travel through the deep disconnection of law training, law firms, modern legal systems. But what remembering is emerging, and what elemental deep nature wants to be expressed. what ancient pathways in law. It's both our sensuality and our power. It's our loving, compassionate, open heart and our fierceness when wrongs are happening. This is the nature of the earth herself, and it is the nature of our bodies. She erupts in volcanic explosions. She whips through with tornadoes. She rages in forest fires. She knows about balance deep in her body. And she's deeply sensuous and alive and ever changing, always shape shifting. And I've included some imagery here. Polly Higgins for me has been, she stands out as a woman who had this kind of earth magic radiance. And so I wanted to briefly introduce these two books. You may be familiar with them already. I feel like these are books that are really aligned with this path. In terms of really looking at um, earth jurisprudence and law. Um, and I look at these books in 1 minute, but just to show this quote from Peter Gable, which emphasizes why this work is important. And he says, law is the most legitimating ideology of the status quo because it solidifies into concrete norms, rules, laws, the way human beings interact and relate. So, yeah, this quote always struck me as very important. It always reminded me of how powerful the law can be. So, The Ecology of Law is the first book to present the law as a system of knowledge and jurisprudence, and as an intellectual discipline with a history and a conceptual structure that shows surprising parallels to those of natural science. There's 3 interrelated themes discussed throughout the book: the relationship between science and jurisprudence, the contributions of jurisprudence and science to the modern worldview, and of modernity to the current global crisis, and the recent paradigm shift in science and the need for a corresponding shift in law to develop an ecological legal order. The authors say deciding on a remedy first requires understanding how this system came about. We did not end up with our current short-sighted economic and political system by accident, although, as we shall see, it wasn't quite planned either. Our main thesis is that jurisprudence, together with science, has contributed significantly to the mechanistic modern worldview. Jurisprudence is an intellectual discipline with a history and conceptual structure that shows surprising parallels to those of natural science. Yeah, that's the quote. I think that's the one that I've just mentioned. And then the other book is Wild Law, which the core premise of which is the call for us all to recognize the extreme anthropocentric nature of our legal and governance systems, and from there to transition with wisdom and integrity towards an ecocentric perspective. And I really love this quote of Cormac Cullinan, and I was reading, and I was like, yes, this is about the feminine. Laws, rules backed up by force are designed to clip, prune, and train the wilderness of human behavior into the manicured lawns and shrubbery of the civilized garden. Wild, on the other hand, is synonymous with unkempt, barbarous, unrefined, uncivilized, unrestrained, wayward, disorderly, irregular, out of control, unconventional, undisciplined, passionate, violent, uncultivated, and riotous, etc. Um, you know, the reason I wanted to bring these books in is that I feel like we're moving forward now. It's like this is where they took the thinking to a certain point, and of course they're all men as well, but they were um I feel like it's this path of embodiment is the next bridge. And I felt really reading these books that the authors, came to the end, and it was like, well, yeah, how do we do this? And there's a sense that we can't just take, these ideas and implement them with this same level of consciousness. So it comes back really to the iceberg. But I did want to mention these books because they are, yeah, they are an excellent resource if you haven't read them. So, just to touch on finally some of my own stories deepening into this path, because it's really only been for the last few years that I have been moving more deeply into this. And just to say, I do think our own personal stories and their details are so important. This is also the feminine path. And we've become so abstract and dissociated from the dirt and detail and intimate details of our own lives, which are rich with symbolism and signs and wisdom. And this is particularly in law, where, of course, we are never invited to share any detail of anything. We have to remain so objective. And this is all about being subjective. And actually, it's a huge invitation to be subjective. And there's a whole other dialogue and conversation. How do we do that in our practice? And yeah, and this is also why I love astrology and the Sabian symbols, because we can often see this kind of symbology playing out in the stories and experiences of our lives. And for those of you, I'm sure you're all familiar with Mirabai Starr and her work, and she does a lot of the writing work and sharing of our stories, and emphasizes this too. So for me, this path, I think some of the highlights, or some of the keys that were whispering to me or presenting themselves to me, was meeting these women on my path, during the time I was doing the conscious lawyer, and being really struck and impacted by them. They were all stepping outside of the system. They had courage. They had deep roots. They were all deeply connected to the earth and their feminine nature in a way that you could sense. I visited Digna. She's the lady there on the bottom in the blue, and she's a Dutch lawyer. And Digna really has her own practice, which is a type of, she was one of the forerunners of conscious contracts, actually. And she really develops her own system and method of this. And I was actually speaking with her recently, but I have a really lasting memory of visiting her office in the woods back in 2017. And you just went down this long lane, and she had a gorgeous little house covered in artworks, and the trees at the back, where she invited me to sit and have tea. And she just really was kind of, her energy was very open and welcoming. And she was telling me that this is where she would bring her clients. And at the time, I thought, such a revelation, so different from the offices that I had been used to, and the legal settings I was used to. And then meeting Polly Higgins also was very influential. And she similarly, I know she did incredible work, for which she is hugely remembered. But it was really also meeting her in person that was really touching, because her energy and her presence was massive. You could tell that this is where the change was. It was coming from the center of her being. And similarly with Monta Ito, who is a really inspiring person, and who lives at the Findhorn Foundation in Scotland. So you can sense also that these women, and there are many, many others, of course, but it is a very deep and long and real connection also with the earth, and letting her speak through them. Yeah, and I just wanted to touch upon that I had this, very kind of magical experience. It was this auspicious day of 11/11, 2022, and I was I was doing a class that day on ancestral feminine magic, and the guide of that class that we were being told about, we were receiving emails about this, was Amanita, or the fly agaric, or this magical red and white toadstool. And I had never seen one of these mushrooms ever in my life. And I went out my back door, I think literally on that day, or it could have been the day before, and there she was, popped up in the grass. And I just had one of those like with your eyes. I was like absolutely gobsmacked to see it. And just, that kind of just incredible magic. Like I could feel it in my body, like this other world whispering. And it's so easy, I think, when we're not attuned to that world, to write it off, and even my son's dad was there, because I remember, and he's extremely uh extremely intellectual person, who wouldn't easily uh believe in anything that he can't see or touch or taste. And I think I was trying to describe, my absolute awe in at this. So, but I just, it's for me, these moments um have come, and I have learned and am learning to deeply trust and follow them. And the magic, we made a huge blessing that day. And I prayed for a lot of different yeah, I prayed for many things, because I was in a quite a challenging situation. And it's quite incredible, because I've ended up living in a place that's right beside an Amanita kind of woods, where our local restaurant is called the Toadstool. And so I was really struck by that, and that these inexplicable magical things that happen, and how we can really feel supported by that. We can begin to really deepen into the trust that we are not alone. We are being guided and held by Mother Earth, and by these eco ancestors, who, through deeply mysterious um, channels and pathways and song lines, and are with us, and they know us. And yeah, I also began visiting a local well. That's not me. It's just a lady at a well. It's not my mother either. It's just a photo I found online, but it's an Irish well, and it looks very like the well I used to visit. Um, and in the beginning, I remember feeling a little awkward, because it wasn't really something I would naturally do, even though I grew up Catholic and would go to the very familiar with holy water. But I'd never visited a well. My mom had never taken me or anything, but I began visiting the well, because especially at some very challenging moments, and I felt a lot of support from the water. And I couldn't deny that I felt something very deep. And I've put there, it felt like sucking a peppermint sweet. But it's like that feeling, where you can't deny that there's um a deep and real energy that's being transmitted to you. And again, I feel like, as we allow ourselves to open these feminine senses more and more and more, and invite them into this realm of law and justice, and be interested in what they want to say, we may be very surprised, and um, yeah, and feel this greater sense of support. So yeah, just to mention a few last um, ideas on healing this separation and walking this path. And really, what I have been doing, I think, these last years is working with guides and teachers that they're themselves in very deep connection with these realms, allowing my body to start remembering, deepening into the study of astrology as a greater law or science that is holding us, and how the movements of the sun, the moon, the planetary bodies influence and shape our bodies, our internal fluids, our psyches, and help us transition from one life phase to another, opening and trusting guidance from the earth and eco spirits or ancestors like Amanita, the earth element, wells, the water element, and remembering guidance that we've already received, though we may not have been aware of it, and validating that and amplifying it, bringing in more prayer, intention, and trust, trusting the unseen and working with symbology and signs, and making regular time and space to connect with the earth and light. So, yeah, this is really just to conclude this theme of healing the separation and walking this path. And of course, my intention also with this container is then to begin to perceive and sense how we can begin to practice law and be in this field of justice from these new places, from this new center of ourselves. So I will conclude there and we can have a dialogue. And yeah, thank you again, everyone, for today. And we look forward to our next session. And just to finally say, actually, and I apologize because I may not have invited you to light the candle, but if you have lit a candle beside you, or if you want to, if you'd like to just like, if you had some of the oil, please feel free to just blow out the candle now and to, yeah, just put your hands in prayer position, um, and just acknowledge that the space has closed for today, apart from our dialogue. But I'm just going to end the recording now. And yes, until we meet again.